So there are moments in human history when people have their plan. They methodically spend lots of time on what their plan's going to look like, how they're going to execute it. And then human beings have expectations around that plan as to how things are supposed to go. We take great pride in how that's all supposed to play out. And then every now and again, there will be something that happens in culture, in society, what have you, that is so all-encompassing, so devastating to the narrative, that pretty soon people forget the whole point of what the plan was, and not only that, what was the whole thing that they were supposed to be paying attention to. There's this thing we're supposed to look at, there's this thing we're supposed to be paying attention to, and then this random thing over here seemingly happens, and when it's all said and done, we're no longer even looking over here. Now we're just looking over here, and then years later, all we even remember is over here. That's the power of what Easter actually is. But let me give you some cultural, contemporary examples, of course. So June 17th, 1994, in Pennsylvania, Arnold Palmer was playing for his final round at the US Open. June 17th, Chicago and Dallas, the world's biggest sporting event, the World Cup, will be played on American soil for the first time. That's happening on the same day as Arnold Palmer. The New York Rangers would be honored with a parade celebrating their first Stanley Cup title in 54 years, also on June 17th. Game 5 of the NBA Finals against the New York Knicks and our Houston Rockets. Also, wow, all right, we still believe. All right, right on, okay? So this is also on June 17th, but you know what? You don't remember that for June 17th, you don't. No, you weren't watching the Rockets, and you weren't watching Arnold Palmy, okay? You weren't watching any of those sporting events. You definitely weren't watching a parade. You know what you were watching? That's right, the juice was loose. And everybody in the sporting world turned to the juice in a low-speed chase. Even the New York Knicks were quoted in saying on this particular day that the arena was half empty. The players were talking about it. You hear about OJ? Like, the game's going on. It's the NBA Finals. And from this day forward, June 17th, no one remembers any of the stuff that happened that I just said, all these great accomplishments, because we were all watching a guy driving an actual full-size Bronco. Just saying, okay? There it is. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, some hurt feelings. We got some new Bronco owners out there. Moving on. Okay, so how about October 14th, 2003, the American League Championship Series. It's the 8th inning. The Chicago Cubs haven't been to like the World Series in like 100 years, okay? Close to it. They've been waiting forever and a day. They are up 3-0. They're 5 outs away from going to the World Series. It's game 6. There's a foul ball that's hit. Now, before I describe the foul ball, before the foul ball's hit, they would go on to lose the game. In the 8th inning, they'd be up 3-0. They would lose that game 8-3. Then they would go on to lose the 7th game of that series and get knocked out forever. Lost, gave up a 3-run lead, and they got blown out, and then they lost game 7. But you don't remember that. No, you don't. Because you remember it as the Bartman game. See, check it out. That's all anybody remembers. Some rando guy just had his headphones on, and forever this poor guy had to go in like witness protection for 20 years because all of Chicago blamed the loss on the foul ball that was hit in the 8th inning that he tried to catch, and Moises Alou dropped it. And everyone started throwing their beer and popcorn on this guy. They actually, when they finally won the World Series, the organization reached out to him because he became the scapegoat, check this out, as to why they lost. No one remembers that there was a whole other inning to play. No one remembers that the Cubs had a lead, and no one remembers that there was a whole nother game. All they remember, that guy lost the game. See? Totally disrupted the narrative. How about September 13th, 2009? A young 20-year-old Taylor Swift. Ladies, I don't know. I never got it, but some of you do, okay? So there she is. She's going to win her first MTV VMA. Did you know it was her first award? No. What do we all remember? Kanye West takes the microphone because Beyonce had produced the greatest video of all time, okay? All you single ladies, right? Here's this next picture. Look at this next picture. Samuel L. Jackson would receive his Oscars win for the Lifetime Achievement Award. He'd been in over 100 films. The 73-year-old would receive his Lifetime Achievement Oscar, okay, from his good friend Denzel Washington. Almost no one knows that on March 27, 2022 is when he won the greatest accomplishment of his entire acting career. Do you know what you remember? One guy making a joke about another guy's wife, that guy getting up and slapping that guy. That happened on the same night. I can't remember the names. I'm bad with names, sorry. I don't know who it was. My point being is that things can happen that nobody plans. And when those things are powerful enough, they completely steal the whole previous narrative and the whole point. And this is exactly what Rome was up against, and all of the Jews that were against Jesus at this time. John 11 would say this, "But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. 'What are we accomplishing?' they asked. 'Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation.' Then one of them named Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, spoke up. 'You know nothing at all. You do not realize it is better for that one man to die for the people than that of the whole nation perish.'" This was their plan. The plan in the narrative was, we're going to kill one guy. And if we kill this one guy, no one will care, no one will notice, we'll control the narrative, and we'll get on the other side of this, and it's just a road bump in our history. That's it, and we'll move on, okay? Now, what they didn't expect was on the same day that he would be crucified, okay? Matthew 27 says that quite literally, the earth shook. That was problematic. It actually describes that holy men were raised back from the dead and walking around. That's a little strange, right? And then if that's not enough, astronomy now, like programs, actual astronomy programs, not Christian astronomy programs, just astronomy, okay? The math behind it is incredibly precise. We now know that the same time that Jesus would die, okay, which was, their month was Nisan, okay, 14 in AD 33. In our calendar, it would be April 3rd, okay? So darkness falls for 3 hours. That freaks everybody out. Then all of a sudden, he passes away, he dies, and then the sun kind of comes out for a few hours, and then as sun sets, we know that at that exact same day in history, a blood moon rises. An eclipse that produces the look and feel of the moon actually turning red. Now, if you're a Greek or a Roman back then, it means that there's an assassination attempt against your leader. If you're from the Babylonian background, what it actually means is that a king just died. They could control how maybe these ragtag bunch of misfits following Jesus, they could control that. They could control how they were going to kill their leader. What they couldn't control is all these signs and crazy things that would happen. So much so that it would be on Pentecost that this would be Peter's point. You all saw what happened in the sky. That's what he says. Crazy stuff happened. And by your own belief system, that means it was a king. And we killed him. See? They couldn't control all of the narrative. And then they did this in Matthew 28, 11, 15. While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while they were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. And the story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. A disinformation plot, propaganda. And you thought you were the first ones to come up with this. Pay them off, change the story, put out a lie, and if we tell it often enough, finally a group of people will finally believe it, and we'll change the whole narrative. Certainly this will work. 1 Corinthians would say that Jesus, before he rises up and ascends up into heaven, appears before more than 500 people. The fact that you're seated here, no matter how often you carve out time in your life to be seated here. You know what it testifies to, whether you like it or not? It testifies to the fact that there's something to this story. Otherwise, why are you here? You know the thing you don't think about on a day like today? Rome. Most of us don't even know who the actual Caesar was when all this happened. We just know his name was Caesar. That was his title. The only time Caesar's even going to come out of your lips, maybe today, is when you're ordering a salad. But look at us, we get all dressed up. We invite family and friends. We take one moment. Some of us, our faith and our hope that this story is true hangs on by a thread. So we give just a little bit of space one more time to believe that maybe this God is real and maybe this story is real. Because if it is real, it means actually perfect love on Friday combined with perfect power on Sunday. See, because your world, your culture, your own sinful nature, and Satan, they've all written a story for you. The story is you're supposed to be miserable, and you're supposed to suffer, and you're supposed to suffer for all eternity. And you're supposed to have an identity that's rooted in pain or heartache. You're supposed to have an identity that's rooted in loss and misfortune. You're supposed to be rooted in your family of origin or your guilt or whatever it is that you've ever done. That's supposed to be the narrative. And that's how your life is supposed to play out for the rest of your natural time here on this earth. That's how it's supposed to go. But today is so significant. Check this out. This is what Hebrews 8:12 says. For I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. That's God. That's what God is saying. In other words, there's some beauty in this. Check it out. We all, myself included, we are actually worse human beings than we think we are. If you think you're bad in this room, you're probably worse than that, okay? If you think you're good, you're not, okay? If you think you're awesome, probably not. Because what this actually says is there was a problem that had to be fixed. And we all contributed to it. Pastors, priests, teachers, regular folks, people you look up to, and everyone on the social order. Everyone is problematic in why that exists. It's not a hood ornament for the church. So what that means is that quite possibly we had a problem with God. There was never going to be peace. Never going to happen. And the whole point is that if Friday was the end of it and Jesus just would have died, and that's the end of it, it would have been a perfect guy that loved everybody a lot, and that would be the end of it. But the fact that perfect love meets perfect power, which is what raises him from the dead. The Father would lift him up yet again, and he'd be lifted and seated on high. What that actually means is no longer is the plan going to work. It's now short-circuited. Now no longer does the Father look at you and just see sinful, broken pieces of human debris. That's not what you are anymore. Now when he sees you, he doesn't see something that came from an alcoholic family or out of a nasty divorce or this thing that fell apart or this thing that went wrong or these slew of decisions that you made when you were in college or spring break or whatever. Now what happens is when he looks down, what he sees is his sons and daughters. Dearly loved. And he's saying in Hebrews, I no longer remember who were they again? All I know now is because of this event that happened. Now when I look at them, this is who they are. Destroys the narrative. And so what you get to have in simple faith and trust in Jesus Christ is you sit here today, counted as sons and daughters of the Most High God. Grace freely given to you. And that's because today, he is risen. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.